which aims to mirror part of a government structure. It is broken down into various portfolios, such as the cabinet of an actual country. Individual persons were already named to take on the various ministries, including the Justice Ministry, which was going to be taken on by a former MP of Germany. This organization also has a military arm, as we have understood it, and this military arm was to create a new German armed forces comprised of Homeland Security troops, as they are called. And in the past, some of the members of this military arm were active serving members of the German armed forces, the Bundeswehr. Individual members of this terrorist organization, based on our findings, have considered penetrating the German Bundestag, the lower house of parliament, by means of force. Apart from these arrests, 140 searches have been undertaken in 11 federal states in Germany, and a great deal of material has been confiscated in this connection. Over the course of the day, today and tomorrow, the suspects who have been arrested will be presented to the investigating judges of the German Court of Justice, and of 8 of these suspects, the ringleaders, as far as we are concerned thus far, Heinrich P. has already been detained in injunctive detention. Some 3,000 police officers were involved in these raids. There were police officers of the National Police, the Federal Office of Criminal Investigation, and many state-level officers of criminal investigation, as well as other police officers. So this is my statement on the measures undertaken today. Thank you.
And you have been listening to the federal state prosecutor speaking there in Germany about the authorities foiling this alleged plot that aimed to topple the Berlin government by force. Here in the studio with some more analysis on that statement and the incident, we have political correspondent Anne Hohn. What do you make of what we just heard there from the prosecutor?
I find it interesting that they mentioned what kind of roles were foreseen for the different people in the group for this new government that this group wanted to instill. I mentioned the judge from Berlin earlier, and she was allegedly supposed to take over the job as Ministry of Justice. And the Prince, Heinrich XIII, that the prosecutor also mentioned, was supposed to be the head of this new government. And I find it interesting that they say that this was supposed to mirror a state-like structure, but with their own ideology.
We also got some more details about the number of arrests, the number of authorities who were also involved in arresting those individuals. Tell us a little bit more about this operation and how it went down.
Well, this is not a small matter. This is the largest domestic terror investigation since 1945. There were, from what I know, 3,000 police officers involved. Over 50 people are suspects. 25 people were detained. So this is really a big thing, actually.
Wow. And, just tell us, how big was the threat and who exactly are these people?
It is a bit too early to say how big the threat was. I think that depends on what they find. For example, how many weapons they will seize or how far they've come in their planning. And from what I understood is that they haven't come too far. But obviously, this is a major threat. And it is important that they found the group now before they could actually attack someone or even try to get into the Reichstagsgebäude where the federal German government resides.
Okay, political correspondent Anne Hohn, thank you so much.
Sure.
And just before the state prosecutor spoke, Germany's interior minister also gave a statement about today's raids. We can have a listen to that now.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are a strong state based on the rule of law, and we know how to defend ourselves against the enemies of democracy. I want to thank some 3,000 police officers from the national and state level for their amazing work today. Very, very dangerous conditions they worked under, and I'm very grateful that everyone emerged healthily after this raid and that they have done so much to defend our democracy today. The security officers of the national and state level have worked under the auspices of the Public Prosecutor's Office, and investigations show the abyss of the kind of threat facing us from the so-called Reichs-citizens movement. This terrorist organization, based on the investigations so far, shares a fantasy based on conspiracy theories aiming to overthrow the government. Only further investigation will show us just how far these coup plans had gone. Certainly they share a hatred of democracy, a hatred of our state, and a hatred of people who push for the common good, which is why the full force of the law will be exerted here. And we will continue with this level of severity because it's about nothing less than the protection of our democracy. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
And that was Germany's Interior Minister speaking a short while ago. As we've been hearing, this has been an unprecedented anti-terror operation for the country. It will likely force many Germans to reevaluate their assessment of the Reichsbürger movement, who have been dismissed at times as a loose collection of pro-gun extremists and conspiracy theorists. Let's have a look at how events unfolded.
It is the biggest anti-terrorism raid in Germany for many years. On Wednesday morning, some 3,000 police raided more than 100 properties in several German states and arrested 25 people, all of them suspected members or supporters of the so-called Reichsbürger movement. Their goal, a coup d'etat in Germany. They wanted to overthrow democracy. Germany's Interior Minister Nancy Faeser said the investigations provided a glimpse into the, quote, abyss of a terrorist threat from the Reichsbürger milieu. Members of the militant Reichsbürger scene are united in their hatred of democracy, of our state, and of people who stand up for our community. This is why we're taking action against such endeavours with all the consequences of the rule of law. If they had succeeded, this man was to become the new head of state. Heinrich XIII, a descendant of an aristocratic family from Eastern Germany, who still uses the symbolic title of Prince Heinrich XIII. The entrepreneur from Frankfurt is said to be the ringleader. She would have been installed as the new justice minister, Birgit Malsack-Winkemann, who was a member of the German parliament for the far-right Alternative for Germany party until last year. She has since resumed working as a judge at a Berlin court. Efforts to remove her from her position because of her involvement with far-right extremists failed earlier this year. The Reichsbürger, a far-right extremist, deeply anti-democratic movement. Its members reject the German state and its democratic system and are prone to violence. German authorities estimate that the scene consists of some 20,000 people. Between 2015 and mid-2017 alone, more than 10,500 crimes are said to have been committed by so-called Reichsbürger.
And DW political correspondent Julia Saudelli is at the scene of one of those raids. Julia, what's happened where you are?
Yeah, so we've heard from colleagues who have been here the whole time that the raid started quite early this morning, and one of the arrested was taken from her home here, and then subsequently during the day, police and investigators took out a lot of objects from the house. You can probably still see some police officers behind me. They've been taking out bags and boxes. The situation has calmed down now, but there is still quite the police presence here, and we are in quite a residential neighborhood on the outskirts of Berlin, so a very quiet spot, and not really used to seeing all this police movement. And the person whose house is here behind me is the one arrested who is a former member of parliament for the far-right AfD party, someone who was literally in power for quite a while. And she is still an active judge in the city of Berlin. They had tried to remove her from her position also because she is part of an extremist wing of the AfD party that has also been under observation from German intelligence, but she was still in her post until now, until her arrest.
This is only one, we understand, of many raids. So what more do we know about the suspects and their motives?
We know that it is a total of 25 people who were arrested, but that there are also 27 suspects that are suspected of being a part of this network, but this still has to be investigated and proven. We know that the ringleader of the network is this one man. He is an entrepreneur based out of the city of Frankfurt here in Germany, but he is also a descendant of a noble family and still calls himself Prince, even though that is just a symbolic title until now. And he is the one who was basically putting together and organizing this network, which also consisted of, as we said, a former member of the German parliament, but also members of the German armed forces and the special forces, one member of the special forces. And he had basically planned to set up this network to ultimately storm the parliament with weapons and try to overturn the democratic order here. And in doing that, they had basically set up a shadow cabinet of people with different roles which they would have taken on once the coup had happened. And in the meantime, they had organized shooting trainings for the members of the network. They were working to recruit more people, in particular people with a background in police or in military work, because of the kind of expertise they had and that the network thought they might need.
Julia Saudelli in Berlin, thank you. China has announced its most significant easing of coronavirus restrictions since the pandemic began 3 years ago. It says that it would allow home quarantining in milder cases and that mandatory PCR